Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Shad and Corey here as your host, getting an update on Guanajuato Silver and the silver market. Guanajuato Silver is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker GSVR and on the OTCQX under the ticker GSVRF. We are joined today with the CEO of Guanajuato Silver, James Anderson, and we're going to take a little different approach today. We're kind of in between news cycles, and we often talk with James off mic about the silver market and about silver mining and how things are going in Mexico. And it's often fascinating. So we thought, why don't we just record an episode on a high level take on what's going on in the silver space? James, as we record this here on Friday, we've seen gold blasting up to a new all-time high, up to 2850-ish. It's bouncing around, but it's encouraging that this week has been a really positive week in gold. It has dragged silver higher up into the mid 32s, which is also nice to see. You guys got to be loving that as a producing company. But I want to get your thoughts on silver itself, the supply demand side, what you see in the pricing, what you see happening and developing in 2025 with silver.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. Yeah, thanks for the question. And I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the metals here and the macro situation with you guys. With regards to gold, we have run to a new all-time high. One of the things that I'd like to point out to your listeners about Guanajuato Silver, it is called Guanajuato Silver. Most of the revenue comes from silver, which is a little over 50%, but 40% of our revenue does come from gold. So this move in gold is extraordinarily helpful for us as well. I think it's interesting to compare the two. I keep suggesting and keep thinking and keep believing that the gold-silver ratio will narrow, that silver will outperform gold because of all of the industrial use that silver has. There was a time, as we were just talking about a minute ago there, Shad, last year, that silver was materially outperforming gold, and I thought that that would continue, but it has not. And I think the President Trump effect, the chaotic effect that he's had on currencies around the world, I think people have been leaning towards the currency of last resort, which is always gold, over and above silver.
So, James, is that the only reason that silver is being held back? Because we keep hearing positive news on the demand front for silver, but look, silver still isn't even really that close to its all-time high as gold just keeps on hitting all-time highs. So it just seems like this very weird anomaly where it's not like silver's doing poorly, but it's just not even, again, close to all-time highs.
I have theories about why that is. Whether those theories are valuable or not, Corey, I don't know. But one of the theories that I have, I mean, if you look at who's buying gold, right? Because generally it is not the retail investor right now. That there are, some people out there who understand that gold's going through all-time highs. They understand that since all governments in the world seem bent on destroying their paper currencies, that gold has a pretty significant place in an individual, in a retail portfolio. But the driver for the price of gold right now are central banks. I can't remember the number, but it's something like 30 or 40 different central banks around the world have been entering the gold market and buying significant amounts of gold. That's not happening in the silver market. It could. There were some little ripples in the silver market a few months ago when it was suggested that Russia was going to include silver as a mix of metals that they would have supporting the ruble and supporting the central bank. If that ever gains some momentum, I can tell you that there is no big above ground stockpile of silver. I mean, it would move the silver price immensely and quickly. The other thing about the silver gold ratio, I guess, just like central banks, the billionaire class of the world, and if there's one thing that's different today than other economic cycles in the past, the concentration of wealth, I think, is more acute today than at any other time in the past. So the billionaires out there, they want to put some of their money maybe outside of the banking system, certainly diversify away from specific currencies. Well, if they're going to put hundreds of millions of dollars into a metal, again, it has to be gold. Gold trades that kind of volume that has deep, deep liquidity. It's very difficult for the super wealthy of the world to be able to weigh into the silver market. Just housing that much silver would be problematic for most of those people. So I think that's another reason why the focus has been on gold for people who are interested in protecting themselves from currency destruction as opposed to silver. However, I do believe that that's going to change, can change. The other element of that, which we haven't really talked about here this morning, is the industrial demand for silver, which no matter what happens politically, I think will continue. We've got near exponential growth in the use of silver for photovoltaics to make solar panels. You can't make a solar panel without significant amounts of silver. The growth in that industry is enormous, with or without the interest of Mr. Trump. So I think that will continue to drive investment demand, but also industrial demand towards silver. And I think we are all old enough, students of these markets enough to know that when silver runs, it can do it explosively and very quickly. And I sense that we're on the cusp of that.
Well, and James, when we see silver make those runs where it really starts to outperform gold on a 2x, 3x factor, it's usually because at the periphery, you have that influx of investor demand. And so while the industrial demand is a constant and it's growing over time, and there's the supply demand fluctuations that we see, we hear about these imbalances and deficits. It's really when investors come in and get bullish on silver that you really see it bid up. Now, I want to give you a soft plug here. You guys talking about stockpiling silver, you actually have a bullion store with Guanajuato Silver. You actually have a store that sells 10-ounce bars, 1-ounce coins. You have hats, make silver great again. I'm wondering when silver will be great again, James, and when investors will bring in that tide that turns the ship around here and rises the whole sector. Are you noticing any trends within your store as far as investors taking part in the silver that you offer?
No, frankly, it's a little bit lackluster, and there's been lots of commentary about what it is that drives the silver price at the margin. Your statement would, lead one to believe that it's the silver investor. I'm not sure. I'm not positive. The industrial demand for silver is enormous, and it is not particularly price sensitive. Right? The amount of silver that one needs to make a solar panel is not huge, and you can easily pass it on to the end user. It reminds me a little bit of the uranium market from a few years ago when, it was dead in the water. Everybody said, well, this is crazy because in 6 months, 8 months, in a year, there'll be no more uranium left for people to buy. And the people who are close to the industry kept shaking their heads and pulling their hair, saying, why isn't the price of uranium moving? When it did finally move, it was like a whole bunch of people going to the store at the same time going, why can't we buy any uranium? And it took off the graph looked like a hockey stick. And I sense that same type of thing can happen to silver. And we just saw it yesterday, right? Gold had a good day, but silver 3x the price of gold on a percentage basis. We went up by almost $1 an ounce. It's pulling back a little bit today, but I sense that we could have, I don't know, 8 days in a month like that, and we would have silver $5 higher at the end of a particular month. So I continue to sense that that's just around the corner here for us.
So, James, this is something that I talk about more in the gold sector, where we need the major gold miners, I think, to support the sector even more. Maybe even hold some gold and silver on their balance sheet to show their investors that they believe in the product they're mining rather than just selling it for usually US dollars on the back end of that. There anything that the major silver miners are doing in your eyes that could support the market even further or could even shed a brighter light on the silver market?
Yeah, that's a great comment. I mean, my first response is, well, where are the major silver miners? Do we have any of those really? The silver market's so small. I mean, I guess we can put Fresnillo into that category, right? Maybe Pan American Silver, although it's more of a gold mining company than a silver mining company. So I know that Endeavour Silver has done exactly what you're suggesting, Corey, on several occasions, where if the price of silver lags, they will stockpile some of that silver. But I think for most of these companies, and Guanajuato Silver is no different, we are not at a position right now where we can change the cash flow situation. Like we need the money to be able to continue to grow our business. And even the major companies, I think, are like that. It would certainly be a helpful sign to the market if a company like Fresnillo, which is the largest silver mining company in the world, were to put up its hand and say, well, we're going to stockpile 5% of our silver, as you say, Corey, because we believe in the fundamentals of silver so much.
Well, while we're talking about silver mining companies, I think it'd be nice to dial into your neck of the woods there in Mexico. You've got 4 operating mines, and we could actually say a fifth and a sixth mine, James, if we count some of the ore that you're bringing over from Pinguico and El Horcon. So you've got a fair sense of what's going on the ground in Mexico, and you made some interesting points about how the Trump tariffs may affect things, but also what's happening in the currency, what's happening in the peso. Love you to weigh in on Mexico silver mining.
Well, as you pointed out, we've just had a very interesting something happen in the Mexican mining industry, which we've been waiting around for permits for a long time. The Mexican government has shown itself to be not particularly friendly to the mining industry, and the Mexican government under Ms. Sheinbaum continues to have great socialist tendencies. So none of that's particularly helpful to the mining industry. However, yesterday and the day before, there were 3 fairly major permit announcements in Mexico. I am of a belief that nothing happens in a vacuum. So why is that? Well, Mr. Trump's suggested tariffs, which are supposed to just start in a couple of days, that will be very, very troublesome for Mexico. Since the Sheinbaum election in June of last year, so only 6 months, the Mexican peso has devalued by over 20%. Now, for us, that's great. That's great news. We make silver and gold concentrate. We sell it, we get US dollars, but 60% of our expenditures, 60% of our costs are denominated in pesos. So a lower peso is fantastic for us, but I don't think that it's particularly helpful, or is it a particularly good sign for the Sheinbaum government? And I think that, they might act brave, but the prospect of having 25% tariffs across the board on a country which, as we speak, is America's largest trading partner, that's a daunting situation. So I just wonder if that's not incentive enough for the government to look around and go, okay, well, where is some made at home industries like the mining industry that's been there for hundreds of years? Maybe we should give that industry a break. Maybe we should give them a hand and allow the professional miners that are doing business in Mexico to thrive. And if that is the case, I can tell you that, just a little bit of help from the governmentos in Mexico, that would go a long, long way to helping all of the mining businesses in Mexico.
How could that help your company then, James? Is there any direct correlation of what the government could do to assist your operations?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you one example. Most of it is just tone, Corey. Are they helpful, or are they putting up roadblocks? In Canada, we have a value-added tax called the GST. Well, when we file for GST rebates, we get those within weeks, right? In Mexico, it takes months and sometimes years to get that money back. And it's simply a bureaucracy that does not function very well. So we had, at one point, I think we had $6 or $7 million that was owed to us by the Mexican government. Now that money has started to flow over the last number of months, but there's still several $1 million, I don't have the exact number in front of me, that is owed to us back from the Mexican government. If that were to just flow a little easier, to break down that bureaucracy, I know it would not only help Guanajuato Silver, but I do know of a number of other junior explorers and mining companies that are in the same situation in Mexico. I know that would help them. And what would they do with the money? There is this sense amongst Mexican bureaucrats, oh, well, the Canadian company will take it back to Canada. Well, not really. What will we do with the money? Well, we'll reinvest it in the mines in Mexico. And I think that would be helpful for the Mexican economy rather than a hindrance.
Yeah, it's a great point, James, and it'd be nice to see more of that synergy between government supporting the mining industry reinvesting in itself and growing itself, which helps all the other surrounding communities and other ancillary businesses that feed into the mining sector. So gets a virtuous cycle going that way. I guess just as we wrap up, since the focus of this was more on the silver markets itself and gold and breaking out, any other thoughts you have for precious metals investors?
Well, I think if you look at Trump's first 4-year term, Mr. Trump is not a strong US dollar proponent. He would like generally lower interest rates, and he's well stated on that. And at least in his first term, a lower dollar across the board. Now, that has not proved the case for the first couple of weeks, but that was exactly the same in his first 4 years in office as well. So I believe that the fever of driving towards the US dollar right now will abate. And I think that the market will continue to view gold as the traditional safe haven that it is, to be able to store one's value outside of a particular currency. Because again, seemingly every government in the world wants to slowly destroy their currency. So if that's the case, I think that gold will continue to generally move higher. Silver will continue to drag in the wake of gold higher as well. But I also feel that because of all of the fundamentals of silver, the very large plus 100 million ounce supply deficit that the silver market is in and has been for 4 years, there will be a day when we'll wake up and the silver market will be very, very tight. And because only 25% of silver comes from primary silver markets, all the rest of it comes as byproduct. So I think to have a true silver price response, I don't know where that extra silver will come from. So I think silver can run a long, long way once it starts, and to the benefit of the silver miners.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there for today, James. Great to get you on just to talk precious metals, silver and gold, but how things are going, the lay of the land in Mexico, and obviously how this sets up the precious metals mining stocks for the year. So great to have this discussion. Looking forward to chatting with you when you have more news out from Guanajuato Silver. We'll get you back on for an update. And if people listening in want to follow along with Guanajuato Silver or check out their silver bullion store that I mentioned, I'll put a link to both the news and to the bullion store at Guanajuato Silver. James, always great having you on the show and looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for the opportunity.